How do we use HTTP in Angular 2? Because we now need to use it. We want to send data the user entered in our Angular 2 application to the backend, to this route we just created. Normally we have this request-response workflow here between server and client. The client sends a request to the server and the server responds. But how do we do this with Angular 2? Remember, we only get one page which we render, and then Angular 2 handles the complete web page. Well, turns out Angular 2 is still able to send requests behind the scenes. So it doesn't re-render the page, but it is still able to send AJAX requests, so requests which are then handled in the background by Angular 2 once we get a response. Such a request is sent with a concept or an object named observables. Angular 2 uses these observables, and observables are basically objects coming from a third-party library which allow us to handle asynchronous tasks. And such a HTTP request is an asynchronous task because we send it now, but we get back the response in a couple of milliseconds or seconds. So the Angular 2 HTTP service, a built-in service which allows us to connect to the web, so to connect to any routes and handle responses in the background, this service uses observables. So it basically sets up a request as an observable, which means it gives us this observable thereafter so that we can listen to any responses we get back from the request which was sent to the backend, to our server. This is just a pattern to make sure that we can still execute code whilst our request is traveling through the web, handled by the server, and eventually gives us back a response. It would be pretty bad if we would have to wait for that. And turns out with observables, it's really easy to do. So once we get this response, we can use another method provided by this observables third-party library Angular 2 uses, which allows us to map this response, which basically means transform it. So for example, extract certain fields from that response we're interested in. And we can do all of that in a callback of this subscribe function we used on this observable to send the request in the first place and to be informed about responses coming back. Well, that's the theory. It becomes more clear once we see this in action, and you'll see it's pretty easy to send HTTP requests with Angular 2.